Are cheap Huanan Chinese motherboards really worth it? I bought one just to try it out, and the results kind of surprised me in more than one ways. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the unboxing and build video. Joke intro aside, that is to point out that the motherboard did not actually come with a CMOS battery. I don't know if all of them do or just mine didn't, but I happen to have an extra, so that's a fair warning to you if you don't have an extra. And it also came with thermal paste pre-applied. That was not the thermal paste that was pre-applied. That was my own because I had already done testing when I did all of that intro and build video. I'd already done a ton of testing on it, so that's not the thermal paste that was already there, but it does show that they did test it and just left the thermal paste on there, which is kind of odd to me, but I cleaned off their stuff and put some Arctic Silver on. This is a Huanan x79 motherboard, and on AliExpress they have these in x79 and x58 varieties. That's all Huanan sells. These boards are manufactured incredibly cheap and normally come in bundles. I myself bought the bundle with 16 gigabytes of ECC RAM and an i5 1650 6-core Xeon. Now, if you were not buying a bundle, you could probably hop on eBay and find a couple, just all the parts for this for much cheaper. Not much, about $50 to $60 cheaper. And you might even be able to use that extra money to, instead of buying a 6-core, buy a 10-core Xeon to slap into either Huanan motherboard or just a general x79 motherboard you find on eBay or Craigslist or something of that nature. However, all of these boards are backed by like a 90-day guarantee from Huanan, which is pretty decent. So if something's all messed up, you can just send it back and you're guaranteed your money back, kind of like eBay and things of that nature. Now let's just go run through the specs of this board. I mean, it's nothing special, I suppose. It's got an M.2 slot. It runs in quad channel, which is very odd considering it's only got 4 DIMM slots. So they must be using some sort of trickery there to make it run into quad channel. And then it has an H77 chipset. So that's extraordinarily odd. Its overclockability is terrible. It's locked down to 130 watts. So, and that's in the BIOS. You can't change it. I've tried updating BIOS. It always just freezes or something of that nature. I've tried modding a BIOS. Again, it just freezes. And I've spent too many hours trying to figure that out. So I just said, screw it. and you can only get it up to 3.9 gigahertz because it runs into a wattage limit. And besides that, the VRM heatsink gets stupid hot. So you might want to put like, I don't know, like a 25 millimeter fan, just stick it on the side and just blow air through it. It doesn't need that much air, but enough to just cool it, and that'll help a lot. It'll help satiate all of that heat, so it's not a big deal. Now, the CPU this came with was an E5-1650, and it performs as well as any E5-1650 at 3.9 gigahertz or roundabouts that area. And then it came with 16 gigabytes of DDR3 ECC memory, and that's the real reason I bought this motherboard, is because it uses ECC and registered. So you can buy on eBay bundles, of upwards to 64 gigabytes for rather cheap, 32 gigabytes and 8 gigabyte modules for $138. And for 138, you can barely get a good kit of 8 to 16 gigabytes. You can't even get a real kit of 16 gigabytes. You can barely get a good kit of 8 gigabytes of DDR4. So it's ridiculous given the DRAM pricing at this moment. Gaming performance on this, it's not terrible. It's pretty good. It's still a Xeon, and it's still, 6-core running at 3.9 gigahertz. It basically performs around R5 CPU, not tremendously better, but not tremendously worse. You can get these for real cheap, so that's not bad. The one problem is there's no BIOS support whatsoever, so any issues that you have in BIOS not getting supported. The real reason I purchased this, if I'm being honest, is pretty vain. It's a green and black motherboard, and I have been searching for one of those for a long time. The only green and black motherboard I found, besides some of the G1 Sniper series, and those are astronomically priced nowadays, is an old LGA 775, and I still actually use it sometimes. So yeah, that would be my reasoning actually for purchasing most of this, besides the curiosity of how this turned out. The manual is actually useful. It's all in Chinese, every last bit of it. So you can download like the Google Translate app and just stick it here and, use your camera to translate it. And that's what I did for some of the part when I couldn't understand where something was in the BIOS or, it's not difficult. The good thing is that the important pieces, such as your reset switch and things of that nature, are actually in English, which is odd, but it is. So that is there. The only real annoyance that I find with this is that, besides the overclock ability, is that you can get an R5 CPU, R5 1600, for about $189 on Amazon right now. Cheap B350 motherboard for around $70 to $90, depending on where you get it and what motherboard and vendor and what feature set you're looking for. And then 8 gigabytes of DDR4 for around the same price that I purchased this whole kit for. Then again, that's only 8 gigabytes of RAM, but that motherboard has future compatibility with the new CPUs that are coming out, all of them. And DDR4 is kind of here to stay right now. So, you got that compatibility. But something about using cheap DDR3 ECC RAM is really nice, and the render performance on this is amazing, plus the aesthetics, amazing. That's really it. If you're interested in more about this board, go ahead and comment below and I can answer any individual questions you have. I've done a ton of testing on this board, and that's really it. Thank you for joining me. This is PG Tech signing out.